All right, welcome back to the podcast. Why do so many New Year's resolutions fail? And what do the women who are actually successful long term do differently? I'm going to do a little prediction first, which is actually an easy one. Because 2026 is not going to be very different compared to past years, to be honest with you. More people are going to fall for the same diets like keto, low carb. More people are going to try and fast and do more cardio, and I see Pilates being big these days. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, right? It's a great exercise and people who really enjoy it should probably be doing it. But the long story short is we're going to be doing more of the things that actually don't drive the results that you want. So I want to touch on a few questions that came up in my DMs. Mind you, most of my audience is women in their 30s through 50s plus maybe. And it's almost funny how similar these conversations go. And it's also sad. Look, as you might already know, if you're a returning listener, what got me into fitness was my personal fat loss journey. I was overweight in 2012 at my heaviest. I felt like shit, looked like shit, and I knew something had to change, but I didn't know how to do it, I got into running pretty early on. I started lifting weights. That was the fun part, but the food part, that was difficult. Then years later, after my, let's call it music career, I guess. I don't call it that, but like, let me paint that picture, right? Because really I just do it for fun. It was never meant to be like a money thing, but at least I got to travel the world. But back to the program. After that, because I kind of had this idea of becoming a CrossFit coach back in 2013, 14 already, when I really got into CrossFit. I want to say 2014, but I put that on hold because of music, right? Traveled the world, lived in Australia for a year, ended up in Norway, and here is where I actually started CrossFit coaching. And same thing, like I got into coaching and I noticed just as much as I was enjoying the training and food was difficult, people on the gym floor were dealing with the same things, making the same mistakes, following, the meal replacement shake schemes, spending a lot of money on these different diets and plans, and even working with some of the bigger companies in Norway and just never really getting to the body they want. They got the 12-week fat loss thing, and that's it. There's no strategy going out of fat loss. You get the result, boom, there you go. See you. But look, New Year's resolutions are, in my opinion, great. I think this is something that can really be very good for someone. But we need to be smart about this. Probably the worst goal to set for 2026 is just saying, I want to lose weight. Right? It's not specific enough. It's not actionable. You can't track it. Right? Mind you, you're also not going to be spending all year trying to diet. You just did that this year. It didn't work. Right? We need strategy here. We need to stop dieting all the time. We'll touch on that too later. But let me just run through these questions, and I'm pretty sure you're going to hear yourself in this. And let me coach you through this as well, because I want to give you some actionable steps here that you can take away from today's podcast. So question first is, why do I lose motivation after the first, 1, 2, 3 weeks of the year, every single time? This one is super common. I know right now you're winding down. It's going to be Christmas in a couple days. You've had an extra busy period at work. The kids are running around and you're kind of putting everything and everyone before your own well-being, right? Because you're a caring mom, you're a caring person. And your mindset is, in January, I'm really going to make it happen, right? January 5th is that first Monday of the year. And you're like, hey, I got the plan. I'm going to do all the cardio. I'm going to hit my steps. I'm going to follow this particular meal plan and all these other things. You start with a lot of motivation, but look, and we'll talk more about motivation in a sec, but the motivation is going to go. So I'm going to ask you, what's going to happen when you notice that emotional crash after the initial hype, right? It could be emotional crash, could be just a bit of burnout, right? Because you've been pushing yourself so hard. Maybe you've been trying to diet too much or already living on low calories, right? But after that initial New Year's hype, which is when most people fall off a couple of weeks into the year, I swear, the statistics on this are crazy. By the end of the year, 95% of New Year's resolutions will have failed again. So basically now, right? Anyone who this year started their New Year's resolution January 1st, or not anyone, but most people, right? 95% of people who started this year, January 1st, with the intention of this year, I'm going to make it happen, they have failed. And many of those people fall off within the first few weeks, or at least the first 2 to 3 months. There are studies on this too. You cannot tie motivation to results, right? That's a big one. You need to focus on the process a lot more than the progress. I need you to start focusing on How well am I executing the plan? And you're also feeling like, what's the point? After maybe a few days of low calories, you're like, why is the skill not down? After your first week of dieting, why is the skill not down? You're pushing, you're trying to restrict more, and you're like, why is it not moving? Not knowing that you might actually be losing body fat already, and that the skill usually catches up the first, 2-3 weeks in. But you're hit with low motivation as soon as you don't get the instant gratification of the skill going down, right? You also don't need to be motivated to get started, or motivated to get started. Here's the thing. Motivation is cool when it's there, but you cannot rely on it. It is unreliable, and it is going to go. It will fade for every single person out there. You're relying on willpower. You think you need to be motivated, and you have no systems in place. Systems is the big word here. And let me tell you this, there's a reason we're called Odyssey Coaching Systems. That's how big I am on systems, because if you can create a system around really anything, you can just execute. But don't set these outcome-based goals. Now, mind you, I do think that a specific, let's say, skill number can be worth looking at so you can map out your phases: fat loss, muscle gain, reverse diets, maintenance. I think that's smart, because if you have 30 pounds to lose, you're not going to do that in one fat loss phase. Straight up, you're not going to. You should not, at least. That's where it backfires. Your goals are maybe too outcome-based, too unrealistic. Like, keep those things in mind, but don't make it the marker of success. Make your goals behavior-based. So maybe you do have the 30-pound goal, but break it down into quarters and months, and look at what different phases you're going to have to go through. But most importantly, create systems. Systems around your food, systems around your sleep, systems around exercise, around meal preps, around food shopping. And you know what? Here's the cool part. You can do this just one by one. So let me just list out a few things that I want you to think of, and let's start creating some systems. Like I said, I want to keep it actionable today, because you don't need motivation. You just need to create a baseline that you just don't negotiate. Like, you just make this a standard right now. Now, a system can also be, hey, I'm going to be tracking my food, and I'm going to have 3 meals and a snack. 2 meals and a snack I'm going to track, and then maybe dinner I'm going to leave open for variety, and I'm going to go with the plate method, and I'm going to follow, a whole food based approach so that I can just have my meals with the family, and we're going to have the family eat some more whole foods. That could be a good approach, but I create systems. That's the most important thing. So think about food. And if you don't know what to do with your food, go to my Instagram, message me meals, and you'll get my free meal plan training. Create a system. Why do you think, by the way, that most people fall off over the weekend? There's no system, there's no structure there. If you show up to work, you know when to be there, when you're going to have your break, when you're going to be done. So it's relatively simple to fill those gaps, right? Make it predictable. That's the most important thing. Set up your life so you don't need motivation. You don't need willpower. You can be in a bad mood and still execute. So maybe for your training, you're just going to create a system of, hey, I'm going to hit this amount of workouts per week. On the days I don't train, I'm going to go for a walk or do some yoga so that I recover. Maybe for sleep, you're going to create a system of, hey, I know what time I need to get up. I know that I want to hit by 7 to 8 hours of sleep. But if you're not, start working on that. Now I know that the last 30 to 60 minutes, preferably 60, I need to somehow wind down. I need to set up my environment so I can have a good night's sleep. Maybe you're going to create a system for, shopping, prepping, right? Whatever you can create a routine around, make it predictable so there's no questioning. You're super busy, I know that. So why do we think that we need to have all this variety and change it up all the time? Just have the same breakfast for a few months. If that sounds too boring, pick one for a few weeks, or even 1 week, rotate. Pick another one. Do the same thing for your lunch. Do the same thing for your in-between lunch and dinner, or maybe post-dinner snack. And then for your dinner with the family, if you want, just change it up, make it whole food based. That one daily meal is really not going to make or break your results if you keep it whole food based and you follow my plate method, which you'll also get in the meal plan training. So again, message me meals on Instagram, you'll get that training for free. Whatever you can systematize, or actually I'll put it this way, the more you can systematize, the better. Make it predictable. Just how you know what time to show up for work. Just how you know when you're going to be done with work. For me, Saturday shopping, Sunday meal prep, and I swear, like every time I wake up, That Monday morning, I know it's going to be a busy day. I'm so stoked that I have my breakfast already. Same for lunch, right? Same for the snacks. Create systems. And the biggest one I think for you is going to be your meals. So message me meals on Instagram. I'll send my free meal plan training, which we might even do a podcast about, but I think that's going to be a really good one for you. And it has some graphics too, so it's going to be good to look at the slides. Number 2, or question 2 really, right? Why do I start strong and then fall off the moment it gets busy? Very common. But look, I'll tell you this. My clients who perform best are always the busiest people. So it's not that you're too busy. You are not, because I can name a handful of clients of mine who are objectively busier than you. There's a good chance I'm busier than you too. And it's not about comparing, don't get me wrong, but look, the long story short is we are all busy, which goes back to the systems. That's why we need to have systems in place to make it predictable. So you can put things on autopilot. You don't really have to overthink this too much. Look, like if you come up with just this first week to rotate, or maybe the next few weeks, a few meals, and then maybe you sit down and you change it up a bit, and you keep building out your menu, and you just find your go-to meals that you can rotate between, with variety, of course, and food diversity. It's actually pretty straightforward. The issue is that we're not planning and creating those systems, like I said. In 2026, I also don't want you to go into that all or nothing spiral again. Because why do you start strong and fall off the moment it gets busy? Well, it actually makes sense. Bit of neuroscience here. When you are stressed and fatigued, or let's say, which usually those go hand in hand, right? But okay. If you're stressed and or fatigued, there's actually a change in where your brain's most active. And you're more in that animal brain, let's call it. You're a little bit more into fight or flight. And this is where we do not make the best decisions. This is where we do not do the best planning. Impulse control, decision making, all these kind of things are affected directly. There's an actual change in brain activity there. Knowing that stress and fatigue are one of or two of the biggest components there for you to be able to stick with it. And by the way, this even plays into willpower and self-control. So if you feel like, hey, I have no willpower or self-control, look at your stress, look at your sleep. If those two are off, that's a clue. But I also know your real life. I know that you have kids running around and then they get sick and then you get sick and then there's work stress and you have to go to the doctor with your kid and then there's maybe some travel involved, whether that's for work or maybe family plans over Christmas. Everything collapses. Like the second all of this stuff starts adding up, right? And then one bad day turns into a bad week, into a bad month. And we're still in all or nothing. Look, let me ask you a question. Have you ever considered thinking of a plan that looks like 60% consistency or 80% consistency? Have you ever sat down, not trying to put the perfect plan together, but put together a plan where you're maybe 80% on point? Have you ever thought of creating a plan of, hey, what will I do when I cannot follow my plan? What does maybe 60% consistency look like when everything else goes wrong? Because the perfect plan only works in a perfect week. You need a messy life version of this. And this is actually something I've been sharing with my clients recently. Like, this is something that I only recently kind of got into more of. I'm like, yeah, we can come up with the perfect plan, but what does like second best look like? And if you can't follow that, what does that look like? And you can make that really fucking simple. If you are maybe traveling, this is something we often do. For example, we'll say, hey, let's hit a certain amount of steps. Or maybe there's going to be fruits and veggies. It's going to be depending on the person, right? Maybe it's just going to be, hey, we're going to have a whole food-based breakfast. It could be sleep. It could be hydration even, right? Having a basic plan. Sure, create the perfect plan for you. Create a day where you're like, hey, if I could execute this, that would be the perfect day for me. Food included, fun included, movement, mindset, social connection, right? Interactions with your friends. You can craft that perfect plan, but also come up with a backup plan. And hell, maybe come up with a backup plan. Because consistency, you hear us talk about this all the time, and social media as well. And you hear it all the time. It's like, it's not about perfection. It's about being consistent. But consistency is actually not perfect. And it never looks perfect. It's trying consistently. That is consistency. The continuous effort of, I tried today, and maybe I fuck up, but tomorrow I'm going to try again. Consistency is also being able to just bounce right back. And the quicker you can bounce back after a bad day, the faster you're going to learn and grow. But you just can't quit after inconvenience, you know what I mean? You got to plan for for the chaos that you know is coming up. Like, look, you got to start troubleshooting here. You got to start planning for the chaos. Next year is going to be just as busy, or likely at least. I don't know your full life, but look, like, I know next year is going to be busy for you. I know it's going to be for me. So let's not act like that's a surprise, right? Let's plan for these things. Yes, have your, in quotes, perfect plan, but like have a backup, have another one, and really start to think, hey, what can I do? And have a bounce back plan that you can put on paper and you can put up or pull up in front of yourself to read through and say, you know what? I fell off, but I wrote out this thing for myself. Hell, you could even talk to yourself. It sounds funny, but look, you can map this out in a document, Google Doc, or maybe write it down, but like create some type of like bad day bounce back kind of sheet for yourself and tell yourself exactly what you are going to do when you do fall off. And a big one here too is visualizing the identity you want to become. Because the cool thing is, sure, maybe you can picture that 2.0 version of yourself. You're leaner, you're stronger, you're happier, you're not dealing with all these digestive issues anymore. You don't have cold hands anymore. Your thyroid is cranking, you're healthy, you look better than ever. Put yourself in that person's shoes, because that is going to be you in the future, and just start acting the same way they would. So maybe as you're maybe creating this bounce back plan for yourself, start to visualize, hey, like what would the 2.0 version of me do in this specific scenario? And you can get detailed. What would they do if they completely overate? What would they do if you miss a bunch of workouts? What would they do if you feel sad or let down, or when you lose your job? There's all of these kind of things we can start planning for. And there's actually an exercise that I believe comes from Stoic philosophy. It's actually imagining like the worst case scenarios, and almost like expecting things to go wrong at some point so that it's not a surprise. Like we're preparing for the stuff that we know kind of will happen. Look, I know you have a big goal, but you're going to fail along the way. It's inevitable. No one doesn't make mistakes. We all do. And the people who win, and the women I coach who lose 50, 60, 70, over 120 pounds sometimes, all they do, they just keep showing up. They learn from their mistakes. And you know what? The successful people make more mistakes because they go further. And the further you go, the more mistakes you make and the more lessons you will learn. Next one that I got in my chat, in my DMs. Why does the scale stop moving even though I'm doing everything right? In quotes. This one is very common. Because what you think is that as soon as you're tracking, as soon as you're training, as soon as you're eating clean, you're going to see the scale drop. And you know what? Sometimes that may be the case. But weight stalls, and now you panic, and now you restrict more. Even after a day where the scale's up, which, by the way, the scale could fluctuate 1 to 2% any given day, and it's completely normal. Now your energy drops, you're more hungry because you're cutting calories more, your sleep sucks, your mood sucks, and that's a spiral again, right? You're already overly stressed. You've already dieted too much for too long. And you're also using the scale as your only feedback loop, because you can also look at other things before panicking. Look, the scale is not your price tag. It's a very helpful metric because on average, I will look at my clients' weight loss and see, hey, how much are we losing? Are we roughly between 0.5 and 1% per week on average? If yes, cool, then we're cruising. Hey, their weight's stable for 2 weeks. And I'm talking average weight, right? Weekly average is stable for a couple of weeks. Let's look at our measurements because we have those every 2 weeks. And guess what? A lot of times when the scale stops, they're still losing body fat. We see it in our waist measurements, for example, different areas. And then as long as they keep going, usually we're pretty good. Like you don't need to make that many macro adjustments. The scale is a helpful tool, but basing your success off of the scale is the least intelligent thing to do when it comes to fat loss. Now, obviously, you might have been trying to diet for a long time. You might objectively be on low calories, and maybe you are able to stick with it without binging in the evenings or maybe overeating over the weekends. If that is the case and you're truly on low calories and you're eating at what should really be a calorie deficit, then it's your metabolism. It's adapted, right? And that's normal, right? It slows down over time. And if that is you and you've truly been on low calories, you're going to have to bring them up. I recently talked about one of my clients who came in at 1,000 calories, some days even lower, 800. And she really wanted to lose body fat, but she did not respond no matter what. So we brought her up. 100 calories here, 200 calories there. She is now eating 2,400 calories after coming in at 1,000. This has been a multiple month process which has been very challenging for her as well. But guess what? She's even lost weight now. I think it's like 2 kilos, 3 kilos over the last few months. And all we've been doing is increase food, more nourishment, right? More stress management. We're slowing down a bit more. We're sleeping well. This week, she actually messaged me. She's like, hey, I slept 8 hours all week on average. Like, I feel more energized than ever. Like, that's the stuff we want to focus on then. Because if you're truly stuck, no matter what you do, is metabolic adaptation. If you are just seeing a short-term kind of plateau, you're just being impatient because look, like fat loss is never linear, right? So you need to be realistic here. Even if you start with a diet, even if your body is truly ready for fat loss in January, there's a good chance you might still not see fat loss for the first couple of weeks. Doesn't mean you're not losing body fat. It just means that the skill still needs to catch up. Next is, why do I keep setting New Year's resolution goals and never stick with them? I think this one is mostly just because of the plan being vague. I think you're doing too much. I think that you are trying to push yourself too hard. And I think we're also missing the point here by not looking at our current habits. Because sure, look, it's cool to set a 20 kilo or 40, 50 pound weight loss goal. But if you don't have the habits, don't worry about it. You're going to need action-based goals. You're going to have something actionable you can start tracking. Whether that's macros, which I do prefer with my clients, or just a straight habit-based approach where you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to hit my steps. I'm going to look at my hydration. I'm going to look at fruits and veggies. I'm just naming a few, right? Or protein with every meal. Or you can come up with a lot of these. And by the way, you can also message me quiz on Instagram, which will give you a full breakdown of your current habits. And I will send you a personalized video giving you a free roadmap. This is literal free coaching. If you message me now on Instagram and you go to my page, you message me quiz, you're going to get the free quiz. And I will get back to you within, like, let's say a day or two, kind of depending on the day. If it's during Christmas, it's going to take a few more days, but you'll get a roadmap. And then we will be able to see, are you ready to diet? Yes or no? Progress is actually pretty boring in a way because you're going to have to do the same shit for so long, way longer than you want it to be. But that's also the hard part. Like, look, it's not even the diet. It's the fact that you're going to have to do the same thing for such a long time to then eventually get the result, right? And then there's the losing the weight part first, and then the keeping it off part, and then maintaining, and then maybe go into muscle gain, and maybe you have more weight to lose, but then you have to do maintenance for 3 months, usually, or longer even, but usually 2 to 3 at the bare minimum. I get that, but look, the plan needs to make sense. And if you have this specific goal, but you don't have the habits, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to do some work first and fuel your body, because you can't start working from a foundation that's already not even there or broken, right? You're not sleeping. You're not eating your protein. You're not hitting your fruits and vegetables. You're skipping breakfast. You're living on caffeine, right? You're stressed. All these things need to first be in place for your body to be in a place where it will respond to fat loss. Another one I see too is that people kind of feel heavier, bloated, tired, maybe constipated, right? Even though they're really trying to be healthy. But what being healthy often looks like, what I see here in the chat, is lower calories, lower calories, lower calories. Clean eating. A lot of people take that too far too, and then your breakfast is tiny, and then your lunch is tiny, and maybe you skip another meal, and then it's like maybe a protein bar or something. You think you're doing good because you're eating the protein yogurts with the berries, and that's all great stuff, but you're just always under eating. If you are eating too little and you are overly stressed, you're relying on caffeine, you're ignoring your rest days, yeah, we might actually be dealing with constipation because of it. You might be dealing with a slow metabolism because of it. You might be dealing with hormonal issues. Women lose their cycle, or it's irregular, or you really know it's like heavy bleeding, a lot of cramping, right? A lot of mood swings. If that's you and you're especially very like irritable, usually that's a sign. Usually that's a sign. It can have to do with your estrogen being out of balance, with your progesterone. If we're not cycling, you're not making progesterone, because that happens only after ovulation, right? Which is the hormone that makes you feel good and calm. And, you need both estrogen and progesterone. A lot of times, right, all these diets and stuff, thinking that you're doing the right thing, you're doing more cardio and, right, you're sweating a lot during your workouts. Like, these things are actually causing the problems while you think that you're doing the right thing. And that's why I can't say this enough. Like, to be honest with you, like, I know it's difficult to hear this maybe, but if you really want to lose the body fat, And like I said before, you don't have the habits in place yet, and you've really been trying to diet all of 2025, then maybe we should not be doing fat loss. And this is literally me as a coach. This is what I do full time, right? Like, I'm not keeping the results from you. I'm guaranteeing results down the road, but that's the difficult part. I just told you about that client going from 1,000 calories to 2,400. That's been a multiple month process. And in a few weeks now, like January 5th, she's finally going to be able to start. And that's after, I want to say, at least 4 to 5 months of coaching. Sometimes it's necessary. Now, here's the good news, though. For many people, that's not necessary. But even then, if you don't have the habits in place, you can't even stick with eating enough. You have the cravings in the evening. You binge every weekend because it's all or nothing once again, right? I'm gonna advise you to please put that fat loss goal on hold until you're consistent with your habits and routines. Because that's when, and this is the next one actually, it's kind of like a psychological pattern where you try really hard, you fall off again on Friday, and on Saturday you're like, I fucked up already, let me just stop. Sunday again, same kind of thing. You're enjoying because Monday you'll try again, right? First of the month you'll try again. January you'll try again. Forgetting that we could have an imperfect backup plan that would still be better than nothing. All or nothing. It never works. Because all is unrealistic and also unsustainable. And nothing, obviously doesn't lead to anything. There's a reason we talk so much about the 80-20 principle. And this is not just whole foods versus flexible foods. This is the whole mindset of, you know what, 80% consistent for normal people like you and me, that's pretty fucking good. Stop trying to get everything perfect in a life that's not perfect by itself. And it's not going to be, especially if you have kids running around. And then the kids are sick. And then your mom gets sick. Then you have to go to the hospital again. And then there's work stress, like all these kind of things. Don't allow for a perfect plan. Now, you're going to have your weeks. I will say this too. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be the party pooper. You're going to have weeks where you're just consistent. Like, you're killing it. Treasure those weeks, right? But also plan for the chaos, like I said earlier. Because restarting is not even a problem. It's actually a good thing that you keep trying on Monday, but it's the fact that you quit every Friday or Saturday or Sunday. All you need to do is just stack those imperfect days. And if you can maybe start at 60% and bring it up to 70 and 80, and then have a couple of weeks where you're 90% plus consistent, incredible. And I guess because I want to keep this actionable too, a really big one is going to be reflection. Self-reflection is something I swear by. I have my journal. I write in it every single morning. Oftentimes I'll do it morning and evening. But look, you're going to have to do some type of reflection, preferably daily or at least weekly. And that's why my clients check in with me. That's why we troubleshoot, right? They review the week. We celebrate what's going well, but we also look at, hey, what can we still do better, right? Self-development can only happen when we reflect. It's pattern interruption. It's the opportunity for yourself to catch yourself spiraling. It's the opportunity on Wednesday to see, oh shit, yesterday on Tuesday, I didn't hit my protein. What can I do differently today? Actually, I didn't hit my fruits and veggies. Like, how can I make sure that I get a little bit more in? My steps have been low so far this week. It's Friday right now. What can I do to kind of catch up? Last week when I went out, I overate. I drank too much and I felt like crap the next day. I was bloated. I also ate too much. What can I do differently this time? We're going out again on Friday. What can I try? Maybe you're going to alternate alcoholic drinks with non-alcoholic drinks. Maybe we're going to drink more water. Maybe we're going to, go out to dinner, but maybe have a different food choice or maybe a bit of protein before you leave. There's many different things, right? I'm just kind of trying to brainstorm here a little bit for you as well. But the self-reflection part is probably the most important out of everything. And that's maybe a big one too. You know what? Out of everything that we talk about today, let that be the one. This is a framework I teach all of my clients for social settings, but you can apply it here too. It goes reflect, plan, and execute. If you can sit down, maybe sometime this week or next week, and you reflect on 2025, and you can look at, hey, what did I do well? What is something that's my strong point that I want to bring into 2026? But what's maybe like a weakness I kind of want to leave behind? What are some bad character traits that I'm not proud of that I can leave behind in 2025? What specific things can I do better in 2026? Reflect, then come up with a plan. Hey, you know what? I've really been trying to diet too much. Let me actually put together a maintenance plan. Do that, build habits for the first couple months. Then maybe go into a short fat loss phase. Take a break over summer. Do another cut after summertime. Bring food back up before it's like November. Maintain or build muscle afterwards. Let me actually get therapy because I know that my mental health has been suffering. Let me actually sign up to the gym because I keep saying that I want to, but I still haven't done it because I've been so busy. Let me find an accountability buddy. Let me sign up with a coach. Try to find what needs to happen to make next year a little bit better. And specifically how. This goes back to making goals actionable. How will you make it happen? What specific steps will you take? And then maybe you're going to map it out month by month. This is what my business mentor had us do. I just recently went to Dallas for a conference, and I mapped out my goal for 2026 with the business. And then we set quarterly goals. We broke the quarterly goals down into what needs to happen monthly, into what needs to happen weekly to make it happen. And then from weekly, I can start mapping out my day-to-day so I can start chipping away. This goes back to the whole planning thing. This goes back to the whole systems thing. It's a bit more planning ahead of time. It's an investment in the short term, but the payoff is massive. It's the same thing with your meal plan. Just make it clear so that, because I also know for myself, I'm going to be dealing with stress. I'm going to be dealing with ups and downs. I'm going to start doubting myself. But if the plan is clear, we can always go back to the plan. We've already mapped it out. We've made it as clear as possible for ourselves so that we don't have to rely on motivation or discipline or willpower or whatever it is. And that way we can detach ourselves too from those emotions because we know we're going to have those emotions and feelings. And we can just focus on, hey, what's the plan right now? What do I need to do to execute the plan today? And if I don't manage, what can I do differently tomorrow? And then through that self-reflection, there you go. Lastly, I actually posted about this today. So I'm recording this on Friday 19th. Go back to my Instagram page. It's a like a tweet style kind of carousel. Check it out. But it goes, why does this feel so hard compared to when I was younger? Right. So I speak to why things are just different when you're 35 plus, but not because of age, right? So don't worry about things being too late. I had a client this year who at 60 years old, just before her birthday, actually hit her goal weight for the first time in decades after trying to diet for decades. And right, it's never too late. And even if you're 70, you can still get healthy, healthier. Hell, you can work out when you're 80. You know what I mean? It's never too late. Don't stress about your hormones too much either. Like a lot of times people will blow up the hormone thing, but in all reality, like if you are actually dealing with hormonal imbalances, the basics just become more important. We need more stress management. You need more rest. You need more nourishment, and you need less dieting. And if you do those things for a few months, like it's going to improve already by itself. And if there's more issues going on, we're going to have to work with some type of practitioner or specialist who knows their shit, who can look at the gut health, who can look at the hormones, who can look at the blood work, things that I do with my clients, for example. It's a lifestyle issue, not your age. And if you think about like why it's so difficult now compared to when you were younger, well, when you were younger, you didn't have the history of 20 fucking million diets that you've done by now. It's the depth that's been building. It's the I don't like to use the word damage, but it's let's say damage actually. I'm going to have to go with that term, but it's the damage that's been stacking up over the years of dieting and dieting without the habits, without the nourishment. And your body's just telling you that it's sick of it, the malnourishment, the fatigue, the stress. It's basically sick of your shit. While all you've been trying to do is your best to get healthy. But the problem is the diet. The problem is the full year of trying all these different diets. The problem is that you've not been having your carbs, which, by the way, fuel your thyroid, right? Which is also necessary for ovulation and all these other things. You need your carbs. And for such a long time, you've been doing it on low carbs. Like your body's going to notice that. That's your main fuel source, which you don't have right now. Let's wrap this one up with periodization, which is a fancy word for mapping out your plan. You are not going to diet all of 2026. You're going to have a plan where I'm going to recommend you, if you're truly on low calories or you've been just all over the place, your habits are not in a good spot, give yourself 2 to 3 months where you build the habits, you build the routines, you nourish first, you fuel first. If you do that, then you can maybe go into a fat loss phase, let's call it 3 months. Then you're going to do a reverse diet, which is strategically bringing up calories. 4 to 6 weeks is usually a good way to start. I like going slower with people who have more weight to lose. And I'll go a little bit faster for people who just kind of want to take the break, but also be ready to do it for their second fat loss phase a little bit quicker, right? Because a reverse diet is still a deficit. Now, mind you, the reverse dieting process, the eating more part, is oftentimes harder for women because you feel like you're going to regain all the weight, but it's not true. just how your metabolism slows down, we need to bring it back up again. You can only do that with nourishment and enough fuel, right? Enough food. You also don't look like you work out because you've never been eating enough to build muscle. Muscle is a expensive tissue for the body to build and maintain. It requires calories. You're going to need fuel for your workouts, which is carbohydrate. That's going to allow you to build muscle. Building muscle is very slow. It usually, as a general rule, I'm going to say like it's twice as slow as fat loss, which means that at least 3 months of muscle gain is going to be a requirement if you truly want to look toned or defined, whatever it is. There's no amount of toning workout you can do that will do that for you. Fat loss and muscle gain at the same time is a fantasy. It can happen, but it should not be the goal. And anyone who tells you that if you follow their workout program, you're going to look toned and you're going to burn belly fat, they're full of shit. It's straight marketing. They're lying to you. And they know they're lying to you as well. Let's tag this one too, by the way, with doing less cardio, more weightlifting. But okay, let's do 3 months at a time for your fat loss. 4 to 6 weeks of strategically bringing calories back up to maintenance. You're going to spend at least 3 months at maintenance, or at least 2/3 up to 1 times the length of the time spent in a calorie deficit. You could even go into muscle gain for 3 to 4 months, which I would say go into calorie surplus for weight gain, which by the way, if you go slow, it's mostly going to be muscle if you're lifting weights. Do that and then maybe go in, but it depends on the person, right? I can't just give one periodization plan for everyone here. But generally speaking, for my clients, because most of my clients are ready for fat loss in January, so they're maintaining now. We've already increased calories before, we take a break. Start of the year is maybe fat loss. We go reverse around April, maintain through summer, practice the flexible habits and not tracking and stepping away from tracking and those kind of things, like big lessons too. Maybe you're going to do another fat loss round after summer, bring it back up, maintain or build through the next winter. And that's your long-term plan. I know this is a lot of info, so what I want you to do is truly, right? Message me on Instagram. If you have any questions, we talked about my meal plan training earlier. If you want that, you can message me meals on Instagram. If you want to have my quiz and get free coaching, you're going to text me quiz on Instagram and I'll send you the link. That's going to help us map out exactly what you should be doing. And with this whole podcast, I think the quiz is going to be the biggest one for you, because that way I can look at, hey, what are you currently doing? What should you be doing first? Is it going to be fat loss? You're going to be telling me how long you've been trying to diet, what your goal is. Maybe you're not trying to lose fat. You're trying to eat enough and build muscle. Okay, different plan for you, right? But if you want free coaching, message me quiz on Instagram and I'll talk to you soon. Cool. See you next week.